Game of Thrones, Book of the Stranger is over, but we're just getting started here on Game of Thrones Live, the post-show recap. And now, here are the two guys with more hot takes than Vias Dothrak. I'm Rob Cesternino. Here's Josh Wigler. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I, too, am very warm right now. As some of you guys may be able to tell if you are watching the video feed, I am in a different place than normal, and it's a little toasty here. I'm in sunny California, and you can tell that there's so much sunshine.
Yes. Well, it is nighttime, where the sun does go down at nighttime, and boy, it was a lot of stuff going on. As some people, I believe that our buddy Humvee might have said it was the happiest episode of Game of Thrones of all time.
The happiest episode.
Unless you were an
of Game of
Asha
Thrones.
fan.
Man,
yeah.
If you're an Asha fan, that was really tough. We haven't seen her since season 3, and then we get her back in one episode, and now we have one more episode, and she's just stabbed in the throat. I feel like this was not great. That made me sad. I was sad to see her go so fast.
Yeah, easy come, easy go.
Yeah, I guess. Will we let her go? I guess we do.
Let's not let that get us down on a night where Dany is back in charge of the Khalasar.
Yeah, she is the Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea. She's back. You know, we've seen a lot of Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains. It was cool to really see her back to her roots, her grassroots here, taking on Khal Morrow and everybody, all on her own steam. Jorah and Daario, they're launching their rescue effort to save her and everything. They're not needed in the end. This is pure Dany, and I thought that was really great. I loved the way that Dany handled this.
Well, we'll talk all that through. We had a Stark reunion at the Wall. People said it would never happen. No two Starks would ever meet each other again. We had that. I got chills.
They're
multiplying. At the Wall, right?
Yeah.
And then we had plenty of other things, family reunions at in Pike. Even Marjorie and Loras got to see each other again. So plenty of stuff to talk about here on a surprisingly optimistic week in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's optimistic-ish. I guess this is probably about as happy as it gets on Game of Thrones. Yeah. You know, it really typically does not work out so well for everybody. But it was really great to see some Starks back together. I don't think that anyone really had Jon and Sansa being the first pair to reunite in their pool going into this season, maybe. But here you go. That's where we're at, and that's fun. They both seem to be pretty happy with each other right now.
Okay, so let's just set the stage real quick. We are live here on Sunday night, Monday morning even if you're on the East Coast. We got our hashtag PS Recaps. You can also post comments on our YouTube channel at postshowrecaps.com/YouTube. First of several Game of Thrones podcasts that we're going to have during the week. We've got the feedback show coming up later on this week. We'll remind you how to get the feedback into the show. I know Terry is traveling. Are you guys going to do a book club this week, Josh?
Yeah, if you guys aren't following Terry Schwartz, my book club co-host on Twitter, Terry@_Schwartz, you are missing out the fact that she was just like in Hobbiton. She was in the Shire. She's traveling through New Zealand right now, which is really cool. So that means Terry can't be with us for the book club this week, but that's okay. We've got a backup plan, and it's pretty great, and you're going to have to listen to the Game of Thrones book club to find out what it is.
Okay, make sure you don't miss any of those podcasts. When you subscribe to our podcast feed, go to postshowrecaps.com/GOT iTunes for that link, and we always appreciate your feedback and Stark ratings in the iTunes store for the Game of Thrones post-show recap. Okay, so let's start with Dany, and what are the ramifications for all of this? Now, could I just talk through, not to get super technical here, Josh,
we love getting super technical, though.
Yeah, I do.
This is your thing. This is your jam.
So basically, Dany just is, she says, well, let me be your leader, and they say no, and they get really, really, I thought that they were very over the top with. They could have just said no. I don't think that we don't want to do that. They didn't have to go see you next Tuesday.
Sure.
Right.
But they're the Brothraki, bro. That's what they do. It was all fun and games until they really went there.
They
And,
really went
that's
there.
how it goes. It's like you go real dark after a certain point, and they went real dark, and that's when you get burned.
You knew those guys were done after that. So now, did Danny have, like, was the stage set here at all? Was this a trap? Like, did Jorah and Dario just like pour gasoline everywhere? I mean, it did seem like this place went up pretty quickly. I know it's a, kind of a grass hut to begin with, but did she
Right.
have any help with setting this up, or she just knew, oh, if I just knock down this torch, this whole place is going to go up and everybody here will be dead?
So you think like the next thing that we saw after Dario and Jorah decide not to kill Danny's friend, and Danny's like, we don't have to run. I've got another plan, and it's totally gonna work. You think like the next thing she's like, all right, you guys find some gas, go into that hut, pour the gas all over the hut, make sure it's
Kerosene.
really make sure it's really in there. Like you really want to make sure that it's like going right up to like the bench where everyone's gonna be sitting down. Then get out of there really fast. Make sure no one sees you, and then I'll take care of the rest. You think that's how it played out?
I just, from what I know about
Or is it just that
physics, and
fire is powerful and awesome, and fire really just did its thing, and Daenerys is a badass, and we could leave it there?
I guess we could leave it there. I mean, if you tell me that's what I'm supposed to, I'm
I
just
don't know. I
looking for
don't
how I'm
think that.
supposed to interpret it.
I don't think that there's too much really to interpret one way or the other. I think it's Game of Thrones. I think fire is powerful and crazy things happen, and I think that's really all that Danny did. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out in episode 5, first scene. It's like Danny high fives Jorah and Dario and is like, oh, you guys did a great job, and as she's high fiving Jorah, finds out that he has grayscale.
Yeah,
That's gonna be
so
the reveal.
we had Jorah and Dario on the rescue mission, and Dario finds out that Jorah has the grayscale. You think that he can keep this between him? Can he keep that secret between bros?
Gotta imagine zero chance because like the level of like camaraderie between the two leading up to that moment was so thin. Their conversation was Dario literally being like, "Oh man, Jorah, it must suck to be such an old man because you can't handle Daenerys Targaryen and I barely can handle her." And he's just like rubbing it in his face and being really awful about it. And Jorah's like, "Can you not? I really don't want to have to break your face before we go and save Dany."
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like they're already like this thin, like they're really not doing well together.
Yeah. Now, when they showed up in Bias Dothrak and Dany ran into them, again, was that coordinated or she just happened to be going to the bathroom at the same exact time that they came around the corner? Because she didn't seem that surprised to see them. She was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Dario and Jorah, I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, I think that is what they call serendipity.
Oh, serendipity.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I just want to be clear how I'm supposed to be if I missed something.
I think she just had like really good timing, or maybe like her bladder just like it's like Darnell Hamilton's gut. Like you just trust it. Like it's time to go pee, time to go to the bathroom, and suddenly now it's time to reunite with Jorah and Dario. I think it was just great coincidence, fantastic coincidence.
Yeah, and I don't want to bury the lead here, but just really a fantastic scene with
Yeah.
Dany and everything that went on. I mean, shades of what went on at Slaver's Bay with the dragons just torching that place. Really a momentous way to end this show.
Yeah, also just kind of, a really beautiful callback to season 1. The big iconic moment in season 1 when Dany steps into the Khal Drogo funeral pyre. It's covered in fire. Everyone's really worried for her. And then the morning after, the dust has settled, and she emerges with dragons. She's naked in the ash, and she is now suddenly super powerful with these 3 living nuclear bombs under her belt, if she were wearing a belt. And it's just like this great, great image. And this felt really evocative of that. Like, it really felt like a great callback to that, and a real awesome return to form for Dany, who I don't think it's just you and me. I think it's a lot of fans have been kind of like, Dany, do something. Like, do something cool, please. Like, stop being just, like, stuck in this storyline. And she still obviously has a ways to go. And I don't think she touches down on Westeros by the end of the season. But I think she's closer to that path than she was at the start of the season. And that's progress, at least.
Josh, can I ask you something that's kind of inside baseball with Game of Thrones, but since you are a Game of Thrones insider, I thought that maybe you might know the answer. I feel like that over the last few years, so much has been made of the fact that Emilia Clarke has said that she has contractually, she doesn't want to do any nudity on the show, and I feel like that she's the only character. I feel like that I've read that she has said in many press reports about how it's in her contract that she's not going to do nudity anymore in the show. But then I was very surprised when she is topless at the end of the show in that big scene. Do we know, was that her? Did she change her contract? Because I thought that she was vehemently against doing nudity on Game of Thrones anymore.
I haven't studied those comments from her super closely, to be honest with you. I'm not so interested in that stuff. But I think,
don't make it like that's
no,
my
I'm
thing.
not, I'm not trying to make it like anything. Let me just tell you my take. My take is, from what I have read, is I think that it's been more that she's like, come on, dudes, hang some dong. Join us here in the naked party. It's a lot of fun over here. I think it was more that, and it was more like, let's have some equal opportunity. I don't think that it's so much like, I'm not doing nudity anymore, but then again, who knows? Obviously, she was naked tonight, and it was a really powerful vision. It was a very powerful scene and image, and I think my guess would be that, like, when it's appropriate and when it's really powerful and moving the story forward, it's something that these people are game for. And I think that this worked. I mean, it shows that Dany herself is fireproof. Her clothes are not, so she's going to come out of there and she's not going to be wearing anything.
It only stood out to me because I know that she has commented on not wanting to do it anymore on the show. But we won't get hung up on that here.
I'm sure that she was like throwing some stuff at the TV the other week when Jon Snow had like a little loincloth over his body. He's like, come on, show us what you got down there. Let's see if Tormund's right.
So where does she go from here with this now? Okay, so now she's got the Dothraki on board. What's the plan now? Head back to Meereen?
Yeah, I think probably, right? I mean, she still has vested interest in Meereen. She at least has to swing back there to pick up her dragons because, they're locked up over there. She's got to pick up the kids before she heads over to Westeros. But I do think that this is great news for getting Dany closer to the Seven Kingdoms by pushing her agenda back to where it was when she was in the first season of the show and, the seasons after that. Dany hasn't really seemed to be super focused on it recently. I mean, she was talking to Tyrion about wanting to break the wheel and everything, but she was so focused on what was going on in Meereen that it felt like Westeros was really far away. But she has this great moment here when she's talking to Khal Morrow and talking to all of his Dothraki and saying, like, this is where I was when Khal Drogo said he was going to, give me the stallion that mounts the world, and we were going to cross the narrow sea, and we were going to conquer everything, and it's going to be amazing. And here you guys are talking about, sacking villages and raping people. And you guys are pathetic, and I'm now going to take over.
It's a bunch of losers.
Yeah, you losers. And I think that, when she is saying that, I think that it's kind of not just like a reminder to us, like what the context of this place is and the importance of this place that she's physically in is to the series. I think it's also a reminder for her. It's like, yeah, let me get back to that, because that was great when we were going to go do that. Remember when me and Khal Drogo were going to conquer Westeros? That was so cool. Now I should probably go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. So I think her head is in that spot, which is great.
It's like, hey, remember when we had like these big plans? We were going to take over the world. Then we got caught up in all this bureaucracy and red tape. Like, let's go back to what we were thinking way back when. Now, we saw with Tyrion, he had this big meeting with the Masters, and really, Grey Worm was out on this. Missandei was out on this. Like everybody else. All the people from Meereen, where they were all upset about this. So Tyrion comes up with this plan, and it's a little bit of a compromise. He says, okay, well, why don't we end slavery? Not today. What about 7 years? 7 years a slave for everybody, and then that's it.
Yeah, oh man, not a great look for Tyrion Lannister, who's typically so progressive and so rootable and, likable, and one of the characters that we really, really love on the show, coming out and being like, the slavery thing, you could do it for a little while longer, right? Like, and he's like on an island with that. None of his advisors are like, no, please don't. We don't like that. And Tyrion's just like, but it's just 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's the big deal?
But don't you think that is like a real world type thing where it's like, okay, I want to pass this, but I'll never get that approved. So here's this watered down version of the legislation that I can get them to say yes to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's it's the bureaucratic thing. We haven't seen too much of the political wheeling and dealing and negotiating on this show in a little while, I think. We've been focused on some bigger picture things and then like petty conflicts as well between the Lannisters and the High Sparrow and all of that jazz. So to see Tyrion, really trying to, deal with these guys, to deal with the Masters of Slaver's Bay, the Yunkai and Astapor and Volantis of it all, and try to end this peacefully on terms that they could buy. feels in character for Tyrion Lannister. And it's an unfortunate look for him, but in terms of his character and in terms of where he stands and what he's good at, you understand where he's coming from, but you also get where Grey Worm and Missandei are coming from, which makes this a really beautiful dilemma, where they're like, you were a slave for like 5 minutes, Tyrion. You know what it's like to be a slave, but you don't understand what it's like to be a slave, which I thought was a really great distinction. And I think that they should be listened to a little more closely when they're saying, like, yeah, go with this deal, Tyrion. That's going to be great for 5 minutes until they completely betray you and don't honor their end of the deal. And I think that that's probably the likely scenario, is Tyrion saying, slavery is over in 7 years. What's going to be in place, 8 years from now? Slaves are still going to be in all those cities.
I thought Grey Worm might have put his foot in his mouth when he was talking about how, they just see me as a slave. They see Missandei as a whore. I feel like that Missandei might say, well, I don't know if that's quite how they see me, Grey Worm. Like, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it that way.
No.
You misunderstand. But do you see that these two stories coming together, where then the Dothraki head to Meereen, and we don't actually go through with the 7-year compromise? It'll actually be the Dothraki will take out the masters and everybody who is against the slaves?
Yeah, kind of hard to imagine Dany signing off on this, and she's in charge of the Dothraki. They seem really into Daenerys Targaryen now. They're all bowing at her by the end of the episode, and I think that, this was on my mind during this whole thing that Tyrion was doing, is like exactly what Grey Worm and Missandei are saying to him is, Dany's not going to like this. And, Tyrion is valuable to Dany, absolutely, but he's known her for 5 minutes. He really doesn't know her at all. She shows back up here and finds out about this deal that Tyrion made. Can't imagine that's great news for Tyrion. Dany has exiled people for less.
Yeah. You feel like Dany's going to get back and say, okay, hold on, let me get this straight. So you negotiated a deal with the masters to keep slavery going for 7 more years. Yeah,
the one thing that I really seem to dislike more than anything else, and you just said that that's cool for the next, better part of a decade.
I'm besides myself about this whole thing. Let me go check in on my dragons downstairs. Wait, you let my dragons out too?
Yeah, you're just letting them run all over the house unsupervised?
Worst babysitter ever. I'm gonna go back on care.com and find somebody new to take over for as the Misa. Okay.
The au pair.
Let's talk about the Stark reunion, because a huge moment in the show and the show's history tonight when Sansa shows up at Winterfell, right?
Yeah,
at Castle Black.
Yeah, of course, man. This was fantastic. This was really great, and I know that you and I were naive enough to believe that this could possibly happen, that Jon and Sansa could reunite here, but it was hard to see, for me at least. Like, how is Jon going to leave Castle Black, wander out, start going down south, and not run into Sansa? So it was either going to happen on the field or it was going to happen at Castle Black. Here it happens. They hug it out, and it is a beautiful, beautiful moment, and it really is one of the happier moments we've ever had on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because I felt like last week's episode ended in sort of a weird spot where Jon is like, all right, that's it, I'm out of here.
Right.
And I figure, he's gone. But no, I'm going to go upstairs to my room and go pack my stuff, and then I'll be out of here. Okay.
How great was it? How great was it when Ed was like, so where are you going? Jon's like, south. And it's like, and what are you going to do? He's like, get a tan. I don't know.
Get warm.
Chill.
Sure. So Sansa is like, okay, come on, let's go. Let's do this. Come on, Castle Black, let's go. Let's go take out Ramsay. And he's like, I don't want to. I don't feel like it.
About that. The whole fighting thing, I'm kind of not doing it anymore. I did that. I lost. I'm done. Let's go to Dorne and drink some Dornish Red. He doesn't seem to really like this idea that Sansa is putting forth, but things progress. Things happen where he's like, all right, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should take care of this.
So they get this Raven where then Ramsay, in great detail, really outlines his plan. Now, what is Ramsay's plan exactly? I mean, is it on the nose that Ramsay basically is just like super villainy type, monologuing type thing? Let me tell you my entire plan here, Mr. Bond. Or is this a trap that he's trying to lure Jon Snow into by sending him a letter like this?
No.
Because if it's not a trap, it does seem like a rather bad move on his part.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think I never really thought about it in those terms, but I do think that Ramsey's got like that Bond villain quality about him. It's definitely like a Blofeld moment. It's like a Ramsey Blofeld, where he's like, "No, Mr. Snow, I expect you to die." Yeah, I think that he's really just courting Jon Snow's ire and just wants to draw him down from the wall, or at least is arrogant enough to believe that he'll turn over Sansa, and if he doesn't, he'll just come up to Castle Black and take him out. Ramsey thinks that he's all that. He's in charge of Winterfell right now. He's Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, and all of that power came to him very, very suddenly. He was a psychopath to begin with. Strategy was never really his thing. That was his dad's game. And this is what the new regime looks like in the North when Ramsay is in charge. You just like tell people exactly your stupid, stupid, stupid strategy and expect people to eat it up by the spoonful. Makes no sense to me, but some people seem to really like it.
Like delicious wall soup.
Yeah. Oh man, that wall soup looked really great.
Yeah,
What do you
better
think was
than
in
the
it?
chicken, right? So then,
Damn.
okay, so let's just stick with the stuff at the wall, and then we'll talk about what's going on back at Winterfell
Yeah.
with poor Asha. So we ended up seeing a couple of interesting conversations between Sir Davos and Melisandre about, hey, by the way, I know you've been here for a couple of weeks. What happened with Stannis?
Right. In Davos's defense, like again, this story is moving slowly.
It's only been like 3 days.
It's been like, 2 maybe. Like it hasn't been more than 3. And a lot of things had been happening, and there were more pressing matters than finding out what had happened to Stannis and Shireen. But Melisandre really, 3 days is enough time to think of like a cover story. Be like, yeah, it was really terrible. Something really bad happened, and this was the thing, and it definitely isn't that story that's real about me burning your friend alive.
Mm-hmm.
She could have come up with something.
Well, the Stannis part was fine, but then he starts asking about Shireen, and you and I had talked about that, I believe, either earlier this season in one of these recaps of the voicemail shows about what's going on with the Shireen story, and I naively said, I don't think that I think that's in the past.
Right.
We're moving on from that, but it came up again. It does seem as though there will be some consequences there in that storyline. I mean, what do you think happens when Davos inevitably figures out what happened?
Not great for Melisandre, and I mean, she really doesn't have friends. I feel bad for Melisandre a little bit. She's feeling really committed to Jon Snow. She's like, I'm gonna go wherever Jon Snow goes. Has she checked in with Jon Snow about that? Like, has she talked to Jon about that?
Good point.
I'm tagging along. He's like, it's kind of thinking this is more of a solo trip. And I think when Davos finds out, and if Davos finds out, but it's probably a when, we already have Melisandre as not like super beloved by Jon necessarily. Davos was her like second closest friend, who's obviously going to be pissed about this. And on top of that, we had Brienne just like saunter in, just like bust up this conversation, and be like, "Hey guys,
I didn't see that coming.
I remember exactly what you did, and I am not going to forget or forgive it." And I think that once, if that secret ever comes up, if it ever comes up that Shireen was murdered basically by Melisandre, you got to feel like Davos is like going to look at Brienne and be like, "All right, green light, take care of this. You're good. I will not stand in your way." So I don't know how it'll play out, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think whenever that comes up, I think it's going to be pretty bad.
Okay, then let's go down to Winterfell and talk about...
You don't want to talk about the new relationship on Game of Thrones? You don't want to talk about the new hotness?
What's the new hotness?
The new hotness is Brienne and Tormund Giantsbane.
How much is that a thing? People are talking about that on Twitter and comments. Do you think that that's really where they're going?
I don't know if it's really where they're going, but it was a great thing that happened on screen twice. Brienne rolls in.
The bear and the maiden fair.
Yeah, exactly. He loves bears. So he looks at Brienne as soon as she rolls into Castle Black and is just like, wow, yeah, into that. And then they're having, breakfast together or dinner together or whatever a couple days later, and he's really just like giving her the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I don't know what Brienne's thinking. She's kind of looking at him being like, I don't know, the big beard thing isn't really my thing. But I don't know, he seems to be into it. So I don't know, I think that at the very least, that was a really fun set of scenes, and I'm excited to see what they do with Brienne and Tormund now that they're kind of orbiting the same space. I think that those are two characters I never really thought about as being on screen together, let alone like exchanging moments. But that's actually a really fun pair.
Yeah, I think so.
I said pair, not bear. By the
Bear,
way.
not bear.
Yeah.
All right. So then, okay, at Winterfell, we had this scene where they bring Asha to to Ramsay, and it's like, okay, what's gonna happen here? And so many bad things possibly,
Yeah.
and yeah, one of the bad things did happen. Did you think at any point that Asha was gonna kill Ram?
No, zero chance. I mean, I definitely didn't think that he was going to kill her. I was surprised that that's where we went. I think I thought that he was going to do something awful to her, something drawn out and terrible, the way that Ramsay likes to do things. But I didn't think him just like stabbing her in the throat was going to be one of them. I thought that we would get a little more Osha this season, and unfortunately, it was not to be. But yeah, that was all really bad. But don't worry, Rob. This is all part of the big conspiracy that the Northerners are pulling together to take out Ramsay. It's like, all right, Osha, you're gonna have to like die for this to work. Like we're really gonna have to sell it. No,
Well,
that's all.
hypothetically,
That sounds like a bunch of malarkey to me.
They could have had a plan, which was, hey, let's send in Rickon and Osha, and we know that Ramsay, he's gonna have Osha brought to his room.
We know that Ramsay really likes slicing green apples time, so make sure that you send Osha to seduce him during slicing green apples time.
I mean, that still could have been the plan.
I guess that's a real
bad
plan.
Right. You're right. It does seem as though that you would think that the cavalry would have been closer by if this was all part of some sort of a hoax.
I think that the hoax is out the window for me, Rob. I'm out on the hoax. I think that this stuck a knife in the hoax.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about then over in the Iron Islands. Speaking of things that Ramsay has stuck a knife in, Theon is home.
Yeah, Theon is back. We had speculated, is it possible? I think this was Brendan Fitzpatrick's theory. Is Theon going to go back to Winterfell, and is he going to be Reek again? Is he going to reactivate in that mode? Turns out he's actually gone back to the Iron Islands. Good for you, Theon. Except it was really not a welcome, return to home. Yara was really mean to him.
She was mean to him because she thought he was coming back. Oh, look, here's Theon come lately. He wants to
not lately.
No, not lately. No. Easy.
Not recently.
Look who wants to show up to be in the King's Moot.
Yeah, it's like, oh, King Theon, this is gonna happen. Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. And Theon shows up and he's like, okay, I don't want that. I really want nothing to do with that, but I want to be your right-hand person. I want to be your number two. I want to work for you. I want to get you elected to the King's Moot. What do you think about him as chief of staff for Yara Greyjoy? Is this a good role for him?
Would you say, is he chief of staff or vice president? Is it sort of like the Ted Cruz naming Carly Fiorina as vice president? Is it like Yara is already down in the numbers really bad and she needs some energy for the campaign?
It's a bad boost if they're bringing Theon in as the VP, so maybe that's accurate.
Carly Fiorina.
Stop.
Not the worst of the day.
Fiorica.
Yeah. Eureka.
Yeah, but you have Theon back in this storyline. Are you excited to see him here in the Iron Islands? This is a good turn for that character, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, after everything Theon has been through, any turn would be a good turn for Theon.
I guess, but I think in terms of the show overall, I guess the Iron Island stuff has to be really compelling for it to warrant taking Theon off into that direction when things are now really starting to heat up between Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton. These two very different bastards who seem to be eyeing each other and getting ready for conflict. Because if Theon hadn't left Sansa's group, he would be at Castle Black right now. You'd have all sorts of, fallout with Jon and Theon about that. And Theon now could be in a position to kind of go back to Winterfell and fight it out with Ramsay on Jon's side and Sansa's side. I feel like it would be really great to have that character in the mix for this storyline that's really building up. So I hope whatever they're doing on the Iron Islands this year is worth keeping Theon away from that story, because I feel like that would have been a really great spot for him.
Yeah, I think that you need Theon there because I think that there's more juice if Theon is there as opposed to if it was just Iron Island stuff and it was
Sure.
just every Euron and Yara having their own sort of storyline and there's not a major character there that we are familiar with. And I think that for especially the TV viewers, I think that it's going to be like, why are we watching this?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's a fair point because it's like, but we've got Yara there. Isn't that enough? No, Yara's not enough. Yara is great. She's fine. But we
She's
need,
been on
like,
the show in 2 years, right?
yeah, we need a main character there. Otherwise, it's just going to be Dorne. And honestly, we had main characters in Dorne, and
Well,
it was still Dorne.
but that probably also speaks to why you needed Jamie there last season, where I think that they felt like, okay, well, there's a whole other
Right.
reason that can't carry, we can't spend 40 minutes of TV time there without one of our main characters in play.
Right. And look how that turned out.
All right. Speaking of Jamie, let's check in with at King's Landing and what's going on, and really some interesting stuff there. Well, first we had our de facto stuff going on with the High Sparrow for the week.
Yeah, the High Sparrow, like, talking for 15 minutes about shoes.
Sparrowlog, yeah.
Sparrowlogging, yeah. Sparrowlog date, yeah. It was just a lot of talk about shoes and fashion. I mean, I did like his remark. I thought that this was actually a really great line to Marjorie about how, like, you're wearing a year, like, the soul of a man, like a year of the soul of the man on your back. Like, I forget exactly how he phrased it, but it was kind of beautiful. Of like, you've probably never thought about the person who designed that dress that you're wearing. If you go back out there, you're just going to go back to your lavish lifestyle. That's what your family. I'm not judging, no judgment, but that's what you're going to do, and that's what I'm fighting against. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a great commentary, and Game of Thrones is really good at doing that kind of social commentary, and I thought that was one of the better moments of that this season. That being said, long scene.
Long scene, and did it work? Because he sends her into Loras. I don't know what he ultimately wants her to do in there, and she's like saying to him, like, "Hey, don't listen to anything that they're saying. Like, don't buy any of this stuff." And he's basically, was he saying like, kill me, end it?
Yeah, that's basically what he was saying. He was like, I don't care. He's like, he's so happy to see Marjorie because it's like, not because she's his sister, but because this might be a person he can convince to kill him. It's like, I don't care if he's playing games with us. I don't care if he's using you to get to me. Please just kill me anyway. That's how miserable I am. That's a really sad state of affairs for the Knight of Flowers. That's really, really rough for Loras.
Yeah, but hold on. So if Loras ultimately wants to die, I mean, why doesn't he just confess his whatever he did? I mean, won't he just?
Well, we don't know. We don't know that he has that option. That might not be on the table. The High Sparrow might feel that Loras is irredeemable, and is.
What are they doing with him? And why does he send Marjorie?
Torturing them both, because the High Sparrow, at the end of the day, probably not a great guy. And I think that, if he is the type of person that really views homosexuality as a massive sin, then he is going to play this awful, awful psychotic game with this guy. And I think that might be what we're seeing, and that's really freaking awful.
Yeah. All right, so we then had a scene where Cersei walks in on Tommen, and there's Pycelle trying to tell him something. What is Pycelle trying to get him to do?
I think he's just trying to be important. I think he's really embarrassed about farting in front of Robert Strong the other week. I think that's also why he's like clanking his chains all around to mask the sounds. I think that he's honestly just there to insert his voice and to feel like he is a part of this. He's part of the small council. Cersei is as powerless as we've ever seen her, even though she's starting to build that back up. And I think Pycelle is sort of puffing his chest out and being like, hey, I can have conversations with Tommen too. Look at me. I'm pretty sweet. I think it's really not much more than that.
Josh, what was your take on, we didn't get to hear what Tommen said to Cersei. What does he tell her that the High Sparrow told him?
Right. Well, she, in the very next scene, goes in to Kevin Lannister and the Queen of Thorns with Jaime and says, Marjorie is going to do the Walk of Atonement. And Olenna is like, no, we are not doing that. That is not happening. And Cersei's like, you're right. Let's not do that. Let's send your soldiers in to stop it from happening. And so she and Jaime have convinced Kevin and Olenna to lead House Tyrell's forces into King's Landing, where they will use them when they are about to set Marjorie off to do this walk of shame. Now, is that actually what Tommen told her? Who knows? We didn't see what Tommen told her, and for my money, I don't remember Marjorie ever saying to the High Sparrow, I'm ready to do this walk of atonement.
Mhm.
I don't recall that at all. So is this a gambit on Cersei and Jaime's part to get the Tyrells to do their dirty work to take out the High Sparrow? I think that that's not off the table.
So, could you talk about where is the Lannister army? Where is the King's Landing army right now, and why aren't they in play right this? Why do they need the Tyrell army to be the attacking force against the Faith Militant?
Right. Well, I think, they've got the City Watch. We've seen the City Watch this season. I don't feel like that's a super robust group, or at least like they are really dedicated to making sure that King's Landing is not blowing up right now because the High Sparrow has so much momentum.
Mhm.
Lannister forces, I think a lot of them are in River Run and like holding down places that they've conquered. So I don't know where like the big mass of Lannisters are right now, but we also know that the Lannisters are weakened, at least as far as they were when they started this show. I think that they're thinner than they've been in the past. So for Jaime and Cersei's perspective, especially when they don't really care too much about House Tyrell, maybe it behooves them to get them to do the dirty work. And if anyone is going to get any major blowback in terms of their personnel, at least it's not our guys.
Okay, so what is this plan going to be? They're just going to storm the High Sparrow?
Yeah, it seems like I think that the way that they describe it, it's like they're gonna march Marjorie out, and before they get the chance, we're gonna take Marjorie back, and we're gonna arrest or even kill the High Sparrow. So it seems like they're waiting for that day, unless I read that incorrectly. In which case, there would be some truth to this thing that they're saying, that they're pitching, that this is what the High Sparrow was planning. But either way, yeah, it seems like they're going to position the Tyrells against the Faith Militant, and blood will ensue. There will be blood.
Okay. Well, looking forward to that because sooner we take out the High Sparrow, sooner we can move on with things.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that, there have been interesting things that he's brought to the show, but I feel like the clock's ticking on that story.
The other big place that we got to see tonight was over in the Vale, and we got Sweet Robin is back with Littlefinger.
Oh, sweet Robin, cool, neat. Yeah, neat Robin was back, and he is so bad at archery. That kid. Wowie, wow, does he suck?
He's not good.
Not great. But you know what is great is how much of a grasp on that kid Littlefinger has. He is so good at manipulating that kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He brought him back, and he's like, "Oh, I brought you a pet. It's an eagle." Like, oh.
Yeah, Mark the Falcon.
Yeah, Mark the Falcon.
Yeah.
There you go. And so he's back, and so is Littlefinger, and we have this really great scene where Littlefinger is being questioned by Lord Royce.
Yeah, Jans Royce.
Like, hey, by the way, what happened? How did Sansa was here? How did she end up with the Boltons? And then basically, Littlefinger turns it around on.
Yeah,
Lord
he points
Royce.
his little finger on Lord Royce, like, you did it. This is you.
Yeah.
It's all your fault, buddy. Robin, do something about it. And Robin's like, should I throw him through the moon door?
Let me think about that. Maybe. Or maybe let's give him one more chance.
Right. It's great. I like it was just so great because Littlefinger, it's easy to forget that Littlefinger hasn't been on the show in 6 episodes. Like, it has been a long layoff for Peter Baelish. We didn't see him for a lot of season 5, and the last time we saw him, I think there were like 3 episodes to go. So it's been a minute, and for him to show back up on the show and really just snap his fingers and be like right back into the heart of power and just being able to manipulate one guy so easily, really 2 people, because he's able to manipulate Sweet Robin, who isn't such a hard mark, but this other guy into basically being like, yeah, all right, cool, I'll do whatever you say, Littlefinger, as long as you don't throw me through the moon door. And all of that in the span of 3 or 4 minutes was really beautiful to see.
Yeah, it was great. So now the Knights of the Vale are going to march on Winterfell.
That seems to be the plan. That's what Littlefinger is saying. And I mean, if we're doing the math here, Winterfell under Bolton control apparently has around 5,000 guys, according to Sansa. Wildlings, they've got 2,000, according to Tormund. However many they've got in the Vale, and they're coming from the south, and these guys are coming from the north.
They don't know they're coming.
they don't know they're coming yet, but we know they are, and I feel
Mhm.
like at this point, you gotta feel like this is going to be lights out for Ramsey Bolton, and like savor the flavor while you got him here, because this is not going to work out well for the guy.
Yeah, no, I like the odds of 2,000 wildlings, 1-1 the giant. You would
Yeah,
are we,
1-1
are
is
we
like a solid 500 just on his own.
right? Are we taking the Night's Watch? Whoever's left from the Night's Watch, or are they in on that?
Gotta imagine those guys could be like, "Yo, resurrected Jon Snow will follow you anywhere."
Right. Then you got Melisandre, Lord
Right.
of Light. So I feel like that you take
This
all
is
those
not,
guys.
yeah, this is not much of a competition.
And I do think that, okay, there are Bolton forces, but I do think, like, oh, the Starks are back? Like, okay, well,
And they have a giant?
right. You would think that, while maybe some people in the North are like, hey, I really don't like that they let all these wildlings in. I'm really not cool with all these wildling refugees being brought across the border. Are we checking these guys? Sure. Some people in the North are probably not going to be cool with that, but, hey, oh, it's a Stark? Okay, I like that. Name brand recognition.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think it's going to be like Starks with wildlings, but they also have a giant is going to outweigh the Blade Man, like the guy who just like really likes to skin people.
Yeah.
I think that's going to work. What's going to be great about all of this when Jon Snow and everybody just like pummel Winterfell and totally take it over, what's going to be fantastic is during all of this, the wall is just going to get completely ravaged and destroyed by the White Walkers.
Yeah.
Completely unattended, and everyone is going to be boned by that.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. Josh, I just want to harp on one thing before we get into the questions from you guys that are watching us live. In that scene between Jon and Sansa, I feel like there was a lot of talk of like, oh, I wish we would have never left Winterfell that day. Do you remember that day that we were all back there? Oh, I wish we could go back there.
Yeah.
You and I have been talking about time travel and potential time travel paradoxes. What will happen if Bran goes back in time to different points in the show's history? You don't think that maybe that we could have at some point Bran going back to the first episode of Game of Thrones and basically, hey, everybody just stay at Winterfell, nobody leave?
And then that has to be the end of the show you're describing.
Right.
So George R.R. Martin is like really, he was at least at one point in time famously came out against the ending of Lost, a show that he loved very, very much, and then said like botched the landing, and he's used that as a reference point of like, I'm not going to botch the landing on Game of Thrones, like on A Song of Ice and Fire. I know what I'm doing. If Game of Thrones, which is not under George R.R. Martin's control, but is obviously heavily inspired and based on his books, if it were to end in that way, then they screwed things up worse than Lost.
Okay, I just thought it was odd that they said
no way.
twice. They said twice, oh, I wish we could go back there. Oh, I wish we could too. I wish we never left.
But I think that we could see Bran go back to that day and try something. I think that wouldn't be impossible and then fail horribly.
Just because that that when we first saw Bran this season, that we saw the other point in time that sort of echoed that moment that they were referencing.
Oh, he was on Lost too.
Yeah.
And he was also on last season of Game of Thrones.
Right. So I just thought that was interesting. All right, let's get into some of these questions. All right, let's start with our Philly, who says, Smart Money says Rickon died some kind of horrific death at Ramsay's hand during the Battle of Winterfell, right?
Man, I mean, if he makes it that far, if he doesn't just die next week, then probably bad for Ramsay. Is really a horrible plan. If this was some sort of plan and you put Rickon in Ramsay's hands, then you are the worst plan maker ever.
Yeah. You think Rickon is dead? You think Rickon's a dead man?
I don't know if he's a dead man. I think that there's ways to get him out of there, but if right now, given everything we know, I had to flip a coin or I had to make a call like yes or no, is he going to make it out? I don't like his odds. I think he's in a really bad spot, and you could very easily see Ramsay doing something awful to that kid.
Do you just feel like that Rickon just doesn't have winner's edit in terms of we haven't seen his story at all? He's the one Stark.
Watch that visibility spike,
Yeah, if he gets the visibility spike, you think he's dead.
Yeah, medevac out of there.
Okay, Sarah Blackfire says, it feels like things were moving very quickly, but I still enjoyed the episode. Where does Dany go from here? Back to Marine? I don't dare dream she'll go to Westeros yet. What do you think? She's got to double back and see what was going on back at base camp?
Yeah, don't dream of it yet. You can dream of it as long as you're not like really banking on that happening. I don't think that Danny's in Westeros this season. I could see the end of the season and the end of the Danny storyline this year being like, all right, time to go to the Seven Kingdoms, and she hops on Drogon and starts flapping off in that direction. Like I could see that. I could see Danny on the way to Westeros by the end of this thing, but not before then, not before the final stretch of episodes this year. I think she's going back to Meereen, and I think that she'll be back there either next week or the week after.
Tom Palmer says, I love how Jon is leaving the stupid wall. The White Walkers are a red herring. Just like in The Walking Dead, the true villains are the humans. Are the White Walkers a red herring, Josh?
I think that, that's a little bit of a misunderstanding of The Walking Dead, too. Like, the humans are awful. They're really bad. Even some of the good ones are pretty terrible. And I think that, you have to be worried about the people who still have brains and can think for themselves. Those people are very, very dangerous, and oftentimes in many ways more dangerous. And I think that that's very true of Game of Thrones as well, where there's so much petty infighting between these people and people really trying to one-up each other and trying to stake out land and going through horrible, violent means to get there. But if you're ignoring the massive army of zombies approaching the wall, trying to break through that and invade Westeros, then I think you're ignoring, that red herring is a pretty big herring.
I don't think
it's a
it's a red
gigantic herring, and I think that herring is going to eat you alive if you ignore it. So I think that it's a pretty big deal on the show for sure.
Okay, It's Really wants to know, what is the ship name for Brienne and Tormund?
Trienne?
Trienne?
I don't know. I'm just taking the T of Tormund and slicing that up.
Bremond?
Brormond?
Brebane?
Tormund, Giants, Brienne.
Okay. This is from John L. Gonzalez. Why is Brienne giving Melisandre a pass for killing Renly?
I don't know. I mean, it's not like she's just gonna like whip out Oathkeeper right there in the middle of Castle Black and chop off the Red Woman's head, especially considering she just brought someone back to life. And Brienne just got there, and it seems like people are at least curious about Melisandre, if not outright thankful for what she just did. Feels like that would be a bad impression to make on everybody. I think just circumstantially she can't do it yet.
Okay.
But she does say, I will remember this, I am not forgetting it, and I'm not forgiving it. So keep an eye on that. I think that Brienne very easily could make a move against Melisandre.
Daniel Johnson wants to know, why do you guys think that Varys was so quiet in the slave negotiations?
Because I think that he read the room and it's like, this isn't popular, but I kind of agree with it, but I don't want to be the guy who says that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let Tyrion take the bullets here on that position, but like kind of quietly, I think he's doing the right thing.
Okay. Alex Kidwell wants to know,
yes,
what seems more appetizing, a big steamy bowl of wall stew or a big steamy bowl of brown from Flea Bottom's finest?
Oh man, I think I'll go wall stew. I think wall stew is where I'll go because you're cold up there, and I think when you're that you're deathly cold. When you're really just like super super freezing, I think a nice bowl of soup, even if it's a not so nice bowl of soup, will treat you better than, in like hot Flea Bottom. Like I feel like that's just like, and outside I just don't like the bowl of brown. That just sounds gross.
Yeah, better question, is the soup a meal?
Is the soup a meal? I don't know. Sure,
okay.
Yes.
Get to the bottom of that one day.
Right,
okay, No Lies wants to know, was the powerful reunion between Jon and Sansa a little less powerful since they've never actually had a scene together in the entire series?
No, because I think maybe it would have been if they had just like pretended like everything was great. Like if they were just like, oh man, we're such good friends and we were like the best siblings and it's so good to be together. But the fact that they air out like, I was kind of awful to you, wasn't I, John? He was like, yeah, you were pretty terrible, but it's all right because you're here now and we've survived so much. Mm-hmm. I think that softened it. I think that made it better. And I think just like for any of those people to see family members again, is just so remarkable in and of itself that it almost doesn't matter who it is. It could have been, I guess honestly, like of all the possible combinations, that is probably the least satisfying one. But it still was really satisfying. I thought that they played it incredibly well.
Let me just ask you real quick, and you have all of these plot lines, down cold. So who is aware of the fact that Bran and Rickon are not dead? Now, Sansa found that out last season that they're not dead, right?
Right, correct.
Did John ever hear that they were dead?
I don't know if Sam. I can't remember off the top of my head if Sam told John that he let Bran and Rickon, or just Bran rather, pass the wall. That happened back in season 3. He let Sam let Bran through. I don't know if Sam ever told John. Somebody can call that out.
Okay, because John did not seem surprised. Like, oh, hold on, Bran and Rickon are not dead.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot of yada yadaing too. I mean, it seems like John told Sansa, "Yeah, I died, and now I'm back," and that happened. And Sansa doesn't even talk about it really. It's just like, well, given the climate of the wall right now that you're not on the wall, which implies that they had that conversation, and she seems to be taking it really well.
Okay.
So they powered through a few conversations off camera.
All right, and then one last question. My TV PC wants to know who will be killed off first, Robin or Rickon? Who you got, Josh?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope Robin. I really do hope it's the sweet Robin.
But the problem is that if Robin gets killed off, then Littlefinger loses all of his power in the Vale. And I think that's sort of one of the biggest things he's got going these days. If he does not have that, what does he have?
Here's what I'll say then. I think that in terms of immediate danger, obviously Rickon is the likelier bet to die. Long term, like I could see Rickon making it out of this thing okay. I feel like eventually the show will give us the death of Sweet Robin. Like I feel like that'll happen eventually because you will want to take that power away from Littlefinger because that's dramatically satisfying to see that guy lose. So I feel like that character will die, and I feel like Rickon is more likely to die soon if it ever happens.
But I feel like the only satisfying way for Robin to die is to go out the moon door, and I feel like that we need to be in the Vale for that to happen. I mean, can you imagine, like, who's going to stab him?
Well, what if you take him to the north and they're like staying at a tavern and one of the wildlings raids the tavern and the door is shaped like a moon and he just like beats Robin to death with a moon-shaped door?
No, we have to see him fly. We have to see Robin fly.
Well, if he hits him so hard with the moon door and he just like goes flying, doesn't that count?
I guess so, but I think that would be the satisfying ending.
It's like second best. That's the second best way to do it.
Yeah, okay. What's the hashtag tonight, Josh?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have any good ones right now.
7 Years a Slave,
no.
Sparrowlog,
Sparrowlog was good.
Carly Fiorica.
No, the Sparrowlog was great.
Sparrowlog, okay, that's probably the most PC out of any of those choices. All right, so Josh and I will be back with our Game of Thrones feedback show coming up later on this week. Lots of ways to get your questions into the show. Of course, you could leave us comments on postshowrecaps.com on this post. That's one way to do it. Also, you could send us an email, GOT@postshowrecaps.com. And then also on our voicemail, our hotline bling, postshowrecaps.com/voicemail to leave us voicemail for the show, and we will get all of those questions answered later on this week. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to not miss it. postshowrecaps.com/GOT iTunes. postshowrecaps.com/GOT iTunes is also a link on the post page on postshowrecaps.com, and then Josh will have the book club later on this week.
Yes, correct.
Also coming up, that Alex Kidwell and I will be back with Fear the Walking Dead tomorrow. We'll be talking about all of that.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much.
Josh and Antonio Mazzaro are continuing Mr. Robot Revisited on post-show recaps. I actually listened to the episode 2 recap.
Oh yeah, have you watched episode 2 or did you just listen to it?
You know, I've seen like the first 8 episodes of Mr. Robot. I need to finish. I need to catch up with the last 2.
I was about to publicly shame you if you were just listening to it without having watched the show, because that's not good. You just want to watch the show.
No, I need the refresher though to get ready for season 2.
Sounds good. Right. That's the purpose of the podcast. Hope a few of you guys are interested in checking that out. postshowrecaps.com/Mr. Robot iTunes.
And Josh, you are killing it on The Hollywood Reporter with all of your Game of Thrones coverage. What do you have coming up in the next couple days?
Well, in about 15 minutes, I'll be hopping on the phone with the man who plays Khal Morro, so we'll get a eulogy from him. If anyone's got any burning questions for that guy, you've got about 10 minutes if you're watching this on the live thing to send them my way.
Ask him if he thinks that Jorah and Dario gassed the temple.
All right, sure. I will. I'll ask him that question. I'll ask him about the
open with
mechanics of
that.
it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's how I'll lead. That's great.
Talk me through the exit.
So excited to talk to you. Yeah, let's get this. Yeah, I don't think so. Probably
Of
not.
course, you can get all that stuff thr.com/Game of Thrones or by following the great Josh Wigler on Twitter. He is at Round Howard.
Correct. Right. Do that. Yes.
All right. I'm at Rob Cesternino. Thanks to Alex Kidwell behind the scenes for pulling all your questions. Looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say on postshowrecaps.com. Have a great night. Take care. Bye.
Bye.